All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. I appreciate your taking time out of your schedules to listen to some of the new laws impacting employers for 2024. I'm Lori Higgins, president of the MetroNorth Chamber, and very glad that we have this opportunity to connect local employers to our state entities to talk about some of these new things impacting employers. And so we have a lot to cover today. Just so you know the general flow of what's going to happen over the next hour. So we're going to begin by spending a few minutes talking about the new pay history ban. Maybe not as complicated as some of the other things we're going to talk about, but maybe not as known. So we want to be sure that you have that information as employers. We will then segue into the upcoming Family Medical Leave Act, and then we will go into the safe and sick time information. So as you have questions for each of our presenters, please put them in the chat. I will do my best to read them off. We'll go topic by topic. If you think of additional questions, though, we should have time at the end for those that don't get addressed during that particular topic. So we are going to get right into it and start with the pay history ban. Our speaker is Michelle Manivel. She is the Director of Community Engagement with the Department of Human Rights. Michelle has been working with the state for 3 years, but joined the department in May of 2023 to focus her work on community engagement and be part of transformational changes in Minnesota. So Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for everyone being here. I have a brief PowerPoint that I'm going to just go through. Can you all see my screen here then? Wonderful. So as Lori said, my name is Michelle Manivel. I'm the Director of Community Engagement with the Department of Human Rights, and I'm very excited to be here to make sure you all know about the new law about pay history that went into effect on January 1st. But before we get started with that, I just want to talk about an overview of the Department of Human Rights real quickly. We are the state's the civil rights enforcement agency, and we have been enforcing the Minnesota civil rights law since for over 55 years now. We are one of the country's strongest civil rights enforcement agencies as well. Our vision is to create a world where everyone can live lives full of dignity and joy and free from discrimination. And the Minnesota Human Rights Act tasks us with 3 primary duties to help achieve that vision. And those are listed here on the screen: to investigate charges of discrimination, ensure contractors hire and retain people of color, as well as pay women and men fairly, and then conduct education and outreach. But what we're here to talk about today is the changes in law regarding when and how someone's pay can be taken into account when determining pay. And the first thing we need to know about the work is the gender and racial pay gap is historical. It's built into the fabric of employment systems. We have a graph here that shows data specifically in Minnesota, showing that white women earn 81 cents for every dollar a white man earns, Asian American women making 70 cents, Black and Native American women 61 cents, and Latina women 55 cents for every dollar. But the gender wage gap in Minnesota has not been narrowed in the past 5 years. And we know that when someone's future pay is locked into their past pay, the cycle of unequal pay impacts them throughout their life. So we can get into the nuts and bolts of what the law does now. So who does it apply to? Well, to make it really easy, it applies to everyone, public, private, nonprofit, any size, state, and it applies to all job applicants. So current employees seeking a transfer, full-time, part-time, temporary, seasonal, anybody and everybody. What does this new law do? Well, employers can rely on the applicant's skill or other qualifications in the job market. It encourages employers to provide information about salary range, benefits, etc. And it also says that if an applicant voluntarily discloses pay history to negotiate higher rates, the employer can then use that information. What employers cannot do is ask, encourage, or prompt an applicant about their current or past pay. And you also cannot consider an applicant's current or past pay then. What applicants can do is voluntarily share their pay history to negotiate for higher pay or benefits, and then report potential violations to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And I'll show that process in a little bit here. So that being said, we have 4 steps that we are asking employers to do to implement to make sure that people are paid fairly. So the first is to remove any information where you ask applicants about or solicit information about current or past pay. That can include reviewing applications, reviewing interview questions, and reviewing forms to use to determine pay. The second is to be clear about how you
I
will set
apologize. My
pay.
daughter was out sick, so I missed
And that includes
about a week.
looking at the job market,
And
looking at the
just to
application
reconnect with
skills
the
or
doctors
other
and by
qualifications.
tomorrow. Thank you for the follow-up.
I think someone's off mute here. I'm sorry. And then the third is to set up a system that makes it really easy for people to be paid consistently and clearly. That can include a form or a template, and some pieces that can go on that form include the makeup of an applicant pool, different skills each person brings, and other really important labor market conditions to help set that pay. And the last and possibly the most important piece is to really communicate this change. We know that things happen well when people are in the loop and the word is spread. So communicating this with hiring managers, leadership, human resources, and really being able to provide any of that extra training to people who are responsible for hiring. So we hear a lot about what will happen if there is a violation. Will there be a fine? Well, how will we work with you? And so possible violations of this law will follow the same process as any other possible violations of the Minnesota Human Rights Act. You can find this chart on our website. So what people do is people contact our office and see if it is something that we can move forward with on a charge. And if it is, then we will contact the employer to conduct a neutral fact-finding investigation. Parties then have the opportunity to do mediation. And if we do find probable cause, it would end up being a conversation case by case on what outcome. We've seen pieces, a lot of our cases sometimes end up in a settlement, updating policies and procedures, or mandatory training for leadership. And then I was just hoping to spend the rest of our time here quickly going over some scenarios. I would like to introduce you to Inez. Inez is looking for a job here and fills out an application for a new job that asks for name of past employers, years worked, main responsibilities, hourly wage, reason for leaving, and the name of the supervisor. Fairly standard questions here. However, is an employer allowed to ask for an applicant their hourly wage on a previous application or from a previous job? And the answer to that is no. That's what we've been here for the past few minutes or so. So under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, an employer cannot ask, encourage, prompt to disclose pay history. And then the second one is Inez is still filling out an application, except at the top of the application, it states that all information here is optional and an applicant can choose what they do or do not want to disclose. Can the employer still ask this? And the answer to that is still no. I've said a couple times today that people cannot be prompted to answer this question either. So that would be a violation. The third one is Inez is finally selected for an interview at the company. In the interview, the manager asks, what salary range would you accept for this position? Can an employer ask this question? The answer to that one is yes. This means, for instance, that an employer may include the question on an application in an interview or as part of the negotiations, but the salary range on an applicant expects to be paid if they are selected for the job. The fourth one here, and this is a scenario we'll work with for the next couple of slides. So Inez has finally been a part of the company for 5 years, making $25 an hour. The company opens a position in a different division with a salary range of $20 to $30. Inez applies and is selected for an interview. They bring a bunch of really unique experience, and the hiring manager here does not know Inez's hourly wage. Can the hiring manager ask human resources for this information to make an offer? And the answer to that is no. The hiring manager may feel like they have good intentions to give Inez a raise. However, this new law applies regardless of intentions. So they would need to use Inez's qualifications, base pay, or I'm sorry, qualifications, experience, labor market, et cetera, to make that determination. And here we have the same question again. However, this time, Inez tells the hiring manager that they will need to make $28 an hour to accept. So what happens here when the applicant voluntarily discloses their salary history? The employer would not violate the Minnesota Human Rights Act then if an applicant voluntarily discloses pay history for the purposes of negotiating wages. We just have a couple scenarios left here. So in this case, the hiring manager already knows Inez's hourly wage because Inez works in the same division and wants to make a competitive offer. What happens when an employer already knows the wages of an applicant? The hiring manager still cannot use that information to decide an offer for Inez. Instead, like I've said many times at this point, they need to use the skills and qualifications that Inez brings, labor market, et cetera. And finally, what about contractors? The company decides it wants to hire a contractor for a specific project, and hiring manager would like to know what a contractor is paid for similar projects in the past. Is the company allowed to ask a contractor about what they were paid for in previous contracts? Yes, the hiring manager can ask a contractor what they were paid for in their contracts. And generally, independent contractors aren't considered employees under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, with the exception of commissioned salespersons. And so those are the scenarios we have on our website as well. We have a couple more. So what we are asking from you all is to really help spread the word here. Again, this law went into effect 11 days ago at this point. And if you see anything or have any questions or concerns, we ask that you contact the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. We have a wonderful webpage that has all of these scenarios. Like I said, we have fast facts, tips for employers. Really encourage you all to take a look at this website as well. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for your time and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Michelle. I do not see any questions in the chat, so I think we're going to keep moving forward. And certainly if you think of something throughout this presentation, please put them in the chat. Or you can always send me a note afterwards too, and I can get you connected and get that information to you. But without any further delay, we're going to move into our next topic, which is the new and upcoming paid leave program. So I'm going to introduce our speaker, Greg Norfleet. He's the new director for Minnesota's new paid leave program. Greg comes to the role after serving in senior leadership for multi-family focused state agencies in Massachusetts, including as the Deputy Director for Operations for the state's paid leave program. He most recently served as the Chief Operating Officer for the Massachusetts Department of Early Education and Care. Thank you, Greg, for being here.
And thank you, Lori, for the invitation, and thank you, everybody, for the chance to speak today. Today, we're going to give a quick overview of the legislation for the paid leave program, as well as what you as an employer can start to do to get prepared for January 1st, 2026, when the law goes into effect. So first off, I just wanted to start off with why paid leave? Minnesota is going to be the 13th state in the country to have a state-run paid leave program. As Lori mentioned, I worked with one of the others, Massachusetts, which was the 8th state to launch. In states that have implemented paid leave programs, we've seen a number of positive benefits for employees and employers, including stronger employee retention, better health and development outcomes for children, higher labor attachment for women coming back from maternity leave, and greater economic security for families when they encounter a qualifying condition for leave. So what is covered under the program? Paid leave is made up of two different types of leave: medical and family. Medical leave is exactly what it sounds like, and this may be familiar to employers that are subject to the Family and Medical Leave Act, the federal program administered by the Department of Labor. Medical leave, it takes care of your own medical condition, like a cancer diagnosis or something that happens to you that makes it so that you're unavailable for work. Family leave is a little bit more broad. It includes welcoming a new child to your family through bonding leave, taking care of a family member who's experienced their own serious healthcare condition, which is caring leave, safety leave, which is support for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Just to note that Minnesota is going to be the 4th state in the country with a designated safety leave program, and also active duty leave, helping our armed services members deal with active duty and being able to handle all of the preparations for going and serving. With these two buckets of leave, you're allowed to take up to 12 weeks of leave within a single benefit year for either family or medical leave. If you take both, you can have up to 20 weeks of combined leave. The most common case that you'll see with combined leave is related to pregnancy. When a parent gives birth, they need to medically recover from pregnancy and postnatal care. In many cases, a birthing parent may take 8 weeks of medical leave and then transition into 12 weeks of family leave, bonding leave specifically. In terms of who is covered by this, almost every Minnesota employer is going to be covered by the paid leave program. If you have at least one full-time employee paid through a W-2, you are likely subject to this law. This includes folks that may be exempt from programs like unemployment insurance. This is a separate program with separate eligibility criteria. And so even if you're exempted from a program like UI, you are required to take part in the paid leave program. This covers all W-2 employees in the state. If you are performing services in Minnesota, or if your services are localized in Minnesota, you'll be covered by the program. You don't necessarily have to live in Minnesota to be covered. You could be living in Iowa, but working in Minnesota. As long as your services are being performed in Minnesota primarily, you'll be covered by the paid leave program. We also will allow self-employed individuals and independent contractors to opt into the program as well. The only populations that are exempted from the program at the start are members of the United States government, seasonal employees working in the hospitality industry. It's a very narrow exclusion for folks for very specific businesses, but otherwise self-employed individuals that do not pay themselves via a W-2 and independent contractors are all excluded from coverage from the program. So what does it mean to be covered? There's two components. When an individual experiences a qualifying condition and applies to the agency and is approved for leave, they're entitled to both partial wage replacement and job protections. The partial wage replacement is a progressive wage replacement scale with the lowest income under 50% of the statewide average weekly wage will be replaced at 90% of your average weekly wage. As you earn more, it is a lower percentage, and it tops out at the statewide average weekly wage, which is currently $13.37 each week. There are also job protections offered under the program. So this includes for businesses that are not covered by FMLA. So small businesses will have the same and actually slightly broader job protections for individuals that are out on leave under 268B. So this is going to be a big change for employers, and we know that. So we want to help you start to get ready for the program now. 2026 sounds like it's a long way away, but 2 years is going to blow by. And we want to make sure that you as employers are valued partners, and we want to help you get ready for the program. So the first major milestone for the program is coming up this summer. So starting in July of 2024, we're going to open up for wage detail reporting. The first wage detail report will be due on October 31st, 2024. Throughout the next year, even during 2024, but into 2025, we're going to start issuing guidance on private plans for individuals that would like to keep their benefit plan or purchase a plan on the private market to cover their employees. We'll be providing guidance and allowing applications for private plans during 2025. starting in December of 2025, employers are going to have to notify their employees of the program and the availability of benefits. On January 1st, 2026, a lot happens. Payroll deductions start, benefits and leaves are available. We'll also have a grant program started for small employers with under $3 million in revenue and under 30 employees. There's a grant program to provide support to hire temporary employees or to pay overtime to employees that are covering shifts. One note is that in 2024, wage detail reporting is due, but premiums, the amount that you pay to the state, will not be due until April 30th, 2026. And on April 30th, 2026, that first premium report will only be for wages from January 1st through March 30th of that year. So as an employer, you're going to be a valued member or a valued partner in the paid leave process. We recognize that leave is a existing part of working in Minnesota today, and we really want to value the employer-employee experience. The requirements under the law are separated into 4 buckets of informing your workforce, helping fund the program, supporting benefits and leave administration, and strengthening the program over time. Starting in December 2025, as we mentioned, you're going to need to notify your workforce. That includes hanging a workforce poster, notifying them about the availability of benefits and how to apply. An individual notification for each employee 30 days before the availability of benefits or 30 days after their initial hire. And if an employee is designated as excluded, you need to notify them as well. We're going to help by creating these notices. We'll have model notices available on our website. And throughout this process, we want to be working with employers to make sure that those notices are effective for getting the information to your employees. In January 2026, we're going to start collecting premiums. So as I mentioned, in July 2024, we're going to start taking wage detail reports. But in January 2026, there's a payroll deduction that can be put into place that funds the program. That payroll deduction is split into a family premium and a medical premium, which is split equally between employers and employees. The employee portion is a maximum of 50%, and the employer portion is a minimum of 50%. Employers must submit at least 50% of the premium, but can deduct the remaining amount through their employee paychecks. For small employers with under 30 employees, they will be subject to a reduced premium. So it won't be as expensive for smaller employers to take part in the program. We get to give you a big update. One of our big first public milestones is that we've made a decision on how we're going to go forward with wage detail reporting. During the months of November and December, we did a series of outreach conversations with different members of the employer community and heard loud and clear that they did not want to create a specific paid leave account in a new system or have to deal with trying to operate this independently of everything else that happens as an employer. So we are partnering with the Unemployment Insurance Division to create a unified return to collect paid leave premiums through a system that employers already know and trust. We're still in the design phases, but the intention here is that for the vast majority of employers that are subject to the unemployment insurance program, they will not need to create a dedicated paid leave account in order to submit wage detail reports. Lastly, we really value employers as partners in this process. We recognize that paid family medical leave is a big change coming for the employer community, and we want to work with you on ensuring that we're developing a program that works for Minnesota employers. Paid leave is part of a puzzle for employers that includes things like Family and Medical Leave Act, short-term disability, earned sick and save time. And we don't want to add administrative complexity. We want to be a resource for employers. And so we're going to be seeking your partnership throughout to engage in things like user testing, things like understanding how we can build technology and process that provides value to employers across the state, and makes the paid leave program a competitive advantage for Minnesota businesses. That's what we have prepared for you today. It's still early days. As we said, January 1st, 2026 is going to be the launch for availability of benefits. And starting over the summer, we're going to start collecting wage detail reports. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Greg. If anybody has any questions, please get them in the chat. I'm gonna mute you for a second, Greg. There we go. I guess I do have one question though. Will I give it a second to see if anything comes into the chat? So I think the wage detail reporting is going to be a surprise to a lot of employers, and summer's not that far away. So what is your plan to reach out to employers between now and the due date to let them know of this new requirement and the steps they need to take to get that to you?
We are going to be updating our website as a first step in order to make sure that employers know that this is a requirement and how you're going to be able to submit through the UI system. We're working through a plan with the unemployment division to maximize our communications, as well as working with third-party administrators. So there's a national consortium of payroll providers that we're working with to help get the word out as well for folks that may not be required to submit to UI, but will be required to submit to paid leave. But we're also very open to suggestions on channels that we should be pursuing, as well as any folks that we should be talking with to get the word out.
Thank you. All right, I'm still not seeing anything in the chat. So I think just again, oh, wait a minute, here is one right here. So 12 weeks medical, 12 weeks family, but a 20-week maximum per benefit year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. So if others come in, we'll get them addressed perhaps after our next section, but we definitely want to be sure that we spend enough time on the next issue, because that is currently a law and there's a lot of portions to it. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is Dave Schofield. He's the Educational Interventions Coordinator in the Labor Standards Unit of the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, where he has worked since 2018. Dave's outreach is focused on Minnesota's labor standards laws, including those that cover wage theft prevention, child labor, pregnant and new parent employees, and other workplace requirements. He travels throughout the state, meeting with businesses, business groups, and community organizations. Before working at DLI, Dave was a labor union business agent overseeing and negotiating collective bargaining agreements in Minnesota and throughout the Midwest. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori. And I know that I'm going to put up some slides as well. Let's see, let's get that going. So that should be showing. We know that there's a lot to take in here for employers on this in this session. So right off the top, I want to say that the department recognizes that, and this is with Earn Sick and Safe. This is a big change, and we're very much working with employers to help get this program going and their workplaces. We know, yes, the start of this program is January 1, so it is law, and it has been enacted. But we know that a lot of employers are still making adjustments, and we're very much working with employers to help them do that. So let's run through the slides. I know that at this point, probably a lot of you are aware of Earn Sick and Safe time. So we're going to do a briefer presentation than we've done, less detail here, and we'll have time for question and answer, of course. The Earn Sick and Safe Time law was one of the significant labor laws, and we've talked about two of the other significant labor and employment laws that were passed during the session. We like to display this slide as a reminder that those aren't the only ones. There were other ones as well, including changes to the laws relating to pregnant and new employee rights in the workplace to express milk and pregnancy accommodations, as well as the unpaid parental and family leave law. Those were greatly expanded to all employers, regardless of the size of the employer and regardless of the amount of time that the employee has worked for the employer. So If you're not up to speed on that, would encourage people to look at that. There's other things here on the screen we see that relate to specific industries. If you're in those industries, we do have great resources on our website if you'd like to learn more about them. The Veterans Workplace poster is a new one for any employer that has 50 or more employees. There's a new mandatory workplace poster that's available on our website, and that was also something that started on January 1st. Okay, so earned sick and safe time. We've talked, Greg went through the paid family medical leave, and of course, that's a paid leave benefit. And earned sick and safe time is another form of paid leave benefit. And it is the first time that as a state, we are going to have a required paid time off law. So we're moving from a state that has no paid time off requirement. It's a completely optional policy that employers can implement a benefit to now that there is a minimum number of hours that are required to be provided by employers to employees for paid time off that meets certain criteria. So when I talk about for all employers, it is really an across the board change. Greg talked about the paid family medical leave, and that it really is again for all employers and even small employers. And it's the same here with earned sick and safe time, as long as the employee is working at least 80 hours annually in the state, they are going to fall under the earned sick and safe time law. So it does include temporary, part-time, seasonal employees. Anybody who's working at least 80 hours, they're going to fall under it. They're going to start accruing hours. They're going to have time available to them. And it doesn't include independent contractors, similarly to the pay history ban. So which family members are included? This is a similar list to the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and it is a long list. There's, I believe, 12 categories, and so we don't have it on the web page here, but it does include a broad set of family members, and including that the employee may be a grandparent and they may be caring for a grandchild, and vice versa. The employee may be a grandchild taking time off to care for a grandparent, as an example. So I would encourage people to look at that list. So here's the reasons that the leave needs to be allowed for. So in one of the next slides, I'm going to talk about how do employer current paid time off programs, how are they able to kind of convert or make modifications to their current programs to make them work with the new law. And this is one of those areas, including the family members, so that you're allowing your time off to be used to care for all the family members in the list, and then also for all the reasons here on this slide. So the reasons are that the traditional sick time reasons, you're taking time off, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to call in sick, and I'm not going to be available for work. That's probably the morning of or the night before, or it's that you have a preventative care appointment, you have some other type of ongoing treatment appointment that you might have on a quarterly or monthly basis, and you're going to use time off for that. It could be that it's the family member is taking that you need to care for as an employee, and you're taking time off to care for that family member. Your child has a doctor's appointment. You're going to take time off to bring your child in to see their medical provider. The third reason is the safe time. So we, the sick and safe time law. Safe time in this law represents employees that are experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or of their family member, and they're taking time off to see a service provider, to go to a court date, to do something else related to it to help get them in a better place, and they're able to take this paid leave to do that. The fourth one here on the screen is where we received the most questions. I'll break it into a couple parts. So it's closure of the employee's workplace due to weather or public emergency. Let's stop on that. So The employee's workplace is going to be dependent on the individual employee's circumstances. So you may have an employer that has multiple locations, like the Department of Labor and Industry. We have a office in Rochester and we have an office in St. Paul. So maybe this big snowstorm that's coming is going to hit the St. Paul office and we're going to need to shut down, but the Rochester office stays open. So in that situation, it could be that the St. Paul staff is able to use earned sick and safe time. If the office was closed, then Rochester wouldn't be able to use it. This also isn't a situation where employers would be required to allow time off if people have transportation related weather issues. So we all know that in Minnesota, we can have difficulty getting to work on some days. But this is not, the employers don't need to allow earned sick and safe time use in those situations. This covers when the office or work location is closed for the employee. The second part of it is if the family member's school or care facility is closed due to weather or public emergency. In that situation, of course, the employer has less control over that, but it is, just as a kind of point of emphasis here to remind, it's for weather or public emergency reasons, and that's the same for the employee's workplace. So it's not if it's closed for another reason, it's not if it's a weekend, or if it's winter break for students, or if it's a restaurant and they are only open Tuesday through Friday and not on Mondays. Those and so the employee wouldn't be able to use the earned sick and safe time on Monday in that situation if the restaurant was closed every Monday. So those are times when employers can limit use of earned sick and safe time. And then the last one is the kind of our pandemic related reason. If somebody is determined by a health authority that they could spread communicable diseases if they were to go into a workplace. So I kind of touched on this a little bit. The second one, especially the interaction with your current paid time off programs. I know you're in the Metro North, so maybe you have employees that are in St. Paul or Minneapolis, or you have locations in St. Paul or Minneapolis. And of course, they do have existing earned sick and safe time ordinances. St. Paul has amended theirs to be in alignment with the state's. It's a state law. Minneapolis is still slightly different. So this is just kind of the reminder that you will need to follow the law that's most protective of your employees. It's a similar principle to the way that federal and state wage and hour law interact together. So for example, with the minimum wage, if you are in compliance with the state's minimum wage, which is higher than the federal minimum wage, you're going to be in compliance with both. Same concept. Make sure you're in compliance with a higher standard. So for example, Minneapolis's ordinance allows employers to restrict use for the first 90 days of employment, and the state does not have that provision. So employers potentially, if there's a need, would need to allow earned sick and safe time use during the first 90 days. Interaction with your paid time off programs. Again, this is most employers are trying to figure out, well, I already do provide some paid time off. How can I make my hours that I'm already offering fit within the law? And that's certainly, you know, a lot of employers again are doing that. And what you're going to want to make sure that your leave, at least the minimum number of hours required under the law, fit the terms and conditions of the law, that people can use it for the same reasons, for the same family members, that they're earning enough time. Those types of things, as long as you are making it work in that way, your hours will be in compliance. You don't have to call them earned sick and safe time. You can continue to call them PTO or vacation or sick time, whatever you'd like to call them. That's fine, as long as they meet the criteria of the law. So a couple other things here, getting into more detail. Earnings statements, so our check stubs, our pay stubs. Greg talked about working with payroll providers and is getting the word out. So payroll providers are key here as well. And payroll providers it's good to communicate with them to make sure that we can add these two elements to our pay stubs. Or looking at your software systems, if that's the way you do your payroll. So there's two elements that you'll add to your pay stubs. One is the number of hours available. So the earned sick and safe time numbers of hours available. So if I have started accruing hours in January and now I'm in June and I have 30 hours available, my pay stub will reflect 30 hours available to me at that point. The second part of what's required on the pay stub or earning statement is the number of hours that I used in the last pay period. And typically that's something that is a line item in the payment section of the pay stub. So it would probably reflect that, hey, Dave, you used 8 hours. I was out for a full shift. So my next pay stub is going to say I used 8 hours of earned sick and safe time. So it's the number of hours available and the number of hours I used in the last pay period. So that's the earning statement. Second thing here on the screen, it says employee notice. Again, with paid family medical leave, we talked about the notice. There is a notice requirement here as well. And the notice informs employees about the law, about their ability to take time off, how they can use the time off. It is something that needs to be issued by employers to employees. We do have sample notices on our website, and there is a certain number of required criteria to be in the notice. For example, what is the accrual year? Accrual year being the 12-month period. Sometimes people refer to it as the benefit year. So it could be the calendar year, it could be the employee's anniversary date, 12-month period. It could be a different type of series of 12 months. Schools often go from July through June with their calendar. The employer can establish what that accrual year is, but it needs to be in the notice. So again, sample notices are on our webpage. The notice also needs to be provided in the primary language of the employee if it's not English. We do have sample notices, and I believe 18 other languages right now on our webpage. If you have an employee that has a primary language that's not listed there, let us know, and we'll get a translation done and posted. So that's that with the notices. Let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to maybe run a little bit quicker here, but I'm going to run through the 3 ways that employers can provide earned sick and safe time. So the first method is accrual, meaning that it's as you go throughout the year, as you work, you earn hours, and it's at least 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. Once the employee reaches 48 hours, the employer can cap that amount. They don't have to provide any more time in that 12-month period. If the employee has unused hours at the end of the 12-month accrual year, those would be carried over, and the employer can cap the total amount of hours that the employee holds at any given time to 80 hours, 80. So here are the other 2 options: front loading with payout, carryover, no carryover. So that is when the employer decides to provide the hours at the beginning of the year. And at that point, they would need to pay out, they would pay out unused hours at the end of the year. This third option is 80 hours. And then in that scenario, the employer would not need to pay out or carry over any hours. Okay. The pay rate that the employer would reimburse at is the same as the hourly wage of the employee for the shift they worked. And there's some other key details here: foreseeable and unforeseeable use. This is kind of the law sets forth that if the employer would like to request the employee notify them that they're going to use earned sick and safe time, they need to have a clear written policy that they've given to employees of how that works. How do you call in? How do you tell the employer that you're going to need time off for an appointment in advance? So making sure that employers, and I'm sure most of you all already have practices in place, but that is part of the law as well. When the employee's been out more than 3 consecutive days, at that point, the employer can request written documentation substantiating the need for the leave. And then third here, replacement workers. You can't tell the employee you can use the time off, but only if you find a replacement. The employers are responsible for finding replacements. They can't make workers find them and make that part of the dependent on the use of earned sick and safe time. Okay, a few other things quickly here. Increments of time. Again, this is related to being able to use the time. So employees can use the time in the same increments of time as the employer's payroll or timekeeping system. Termination, be clear, no time, unused time does not need to be paid out when somebody leaves their job. Employers can continue to pay out unused time, and different employers have different systems for that and different reasons that they do like to use that, and they can continue to do that. But this law does not require time to be paid out when somebody leaves their job for whatever reason. If the person returns to work for the same employer within 180 days, their hours would be reinstated. So if I had 30 hours when I left, I just had a change of plans and came back to my same employer within 30 days, those are, within 180 days, then the 30 hours would be restored. Construction collective bargaining agreements. There is a possibility for construction companies with collective bargaining agreements to sign a waiver in their collective bargaining agreements of the earned sick and safe time requirements. And then last thing here is the employer attendance policies. If the employee is using earned sick and safe time, the employer cannot have them accrue points on their attendance policy, attendance system. Oftentimes those are those no-fault attendance policies. So in those situations, if the person's using earned sick and safe, they couldn't accrue a point. And then finally, again, lots of information in a very quick format here. Here's your follow-up resources. So your go-to place is going to be that earned sick and safe time page at the top there. FAQs, employee sample notices, fact sheets. We have videos in multiple languages, lots of good information. There's our contact information, our phone number, and our email. At this point, we're receiving over 100 calls and emails about earned sick and safe time every day. So most of them from employers. So we're happy to take those calls. And our wage and hour bulletin is a great place to stay updated on all this information. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know that was a lot of information all at once, and I appreciate you condensing it for this particular presentation. There are a couple of questions that came in, so we're going to get right to those, and keep putting your questions in, because if we do run out of time, I will make sure that we get answers for you. Backing up a little bit, there was one that came in. Are seasonal employees exempt from using leave during the off season? What's to prevent them, or are they prevented from using that before applying for unemployment or during? I believe that's for Greg.
That's for me. So the seasonal employer exclusion is really quite narrow, and it's for seasonal hospitality businesses where their revenue is I think it's over 66% in a 6-month period. And the individuals who are working less than 150 days. And that is going to require a application process to designate these individuals as seasonal for the purposes of the law, just to kind of set that groundwork for the seasonal exclusion. The other part to the question is that paid family medical leave is a little bit different in that it's a social insurance program that's tied to the individual rather than tied to a business. So your financial eligibility could follow you between employers, meaning that during the off season, if somebody experiences a qualifying event, they may qualify for paid family medical leave. In terms of when they're applying for unemployment insurance, this will be part of our internal controls policies and procedures to ensure that we are catching. We're going to be sharing data with other state agencies to ensure that you're not double dipping in different public benefits programs, as well as from payments from the employer.
Thank you. Looks like these next ones are about ESST, so we'll go back to that. The first one is, can we ask for written proof or verification that the time is being used for actual sick or safe time for our records?
Yes, so that would be as far as written documentation that is allowed only in situations where the person has been out more than 3 consecutive days. We do recognize that employers do need to know if the person is out for a earned sick and safe time reason. So for example, if I'm the employee and I was to call in, so kind of separating this from that over more than 3 days situation, if I was to call in, it's most likely there's going to be a conversation to say, the employee isn't just going to say, I'm not coming in. They're going to say, okay, I'm not coming in. I'm going to be using earned sick and safe time. I'm not feeling well. There's going to be some type of conversation there or description of the situation, and the employer could certainly ask, do you want to use earned sick and safe time? So there's that element as well, as far as the employer being kind of more informed about the situation.
Thank you. And then the next question, a new employee must work 80 hours before they are eligible for the ESST, correct?
So what we've said, yes, because so the law defines employees under the law as those that work more than 80 hours for an employer. It also says that employees begin to accrue time as soon as they begin work, and that they're eligible to use time as soon as it's accrued. So that can be a little bit confusing and tricky, and we've had a lot of questions about it. So what we've said in that situation is, if you have an employee who is working in an event or a very temporary type of situation where it's in doubt if they're going to reach 80, then yes, the employer, it makes sense to hold or restrict the hours accrued until they reach 80. If you're hiring a full-time or a part-time employee and you anticipate they will be working at least 80 hours, then you should make those hours available as they accrue them.
Thank you. Next question, can we track the number of hours available and number of hours used in the last pay period separate from the pay stub? We are currently using a Google Sheet because our payroll is processed by a third party.
Yeah, I know this is a challenge for employers in different situations as far as the pay stub, and people have been looking to have alternative ways of providing this information. The law does say it needs to be on the pay stub. So potentially that employer could attach that document to the pay stub or find some other way to deliver that information together with the pay stub in the short term, while maybe they're looking for a more long-term solution to include that.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up to that. So if the pay stub currently says PTO or such, does it need to say ESST as well?
It doesn't. No, thank you for asking, Lori, because yeah, it can be, and we've said that employers can have all their hours together if it's PTO, even if it's a more generous plan, and even if some of those hours are beyond the minimum number of hours, and if some of those hours possibly fall under different policies because they're part of a more generous plan in terms of having more hours. So if an employer, for example, had 100 PTO hours that they offered, they could combine all that together on the pay stub.
Okay, thank you. So is the payout of ESST automatic by the employer, or does the employee need to request use?
The payout, so I guess just to be like, the payout would be, is this like for a one, if I use it for a 1 day, or are we talking about the end of the year in a front loading situation? I guess I'll say for both scenarios, it is automatic that it would be the employer that would be including that, so that the employee wouldn't need to request payment. That's just part of the benefit.
Okay, thank you. And then just in case people did not see this in the chat, I'm just going to read it because I think it's helpful. So there's a question, is there going to be special forms or reports in addition to the quarterly reports that are filed now? And Greg answered that we are designing our solution with the intention of minimizing redundant reporting for employers. So thank you, Greg, for that answer, as well as for that consideration, because none of us like to report things more than we have to, or multiple places, you know what I mean? So I'm not seeing any other questions. So while
Can I, Lori, just because we've had, I think, it is difficult at the time when both of these laws are
Yes.
in confusion. So that's one of the questions we get is what do I need to report about earned sick and safe time? And the answer is there is no reporting. That is something that employers would keep their own record keeping on. There's no mandatory reporting to the state for earned sick and safe time.
Thank you. And then we do intend to make this recording available afterwards. But again, I encourage you to contact me or the folks here at these departments, look at their websites and get your questions answered, because you don't know what you don't know. And we want to be sure that our employers are in compliance. With that, I do want to quickly mention, and I'll keep my eye on the chat here, but while I have your attention, we do have a legislative reception on February 1st from 4 to 6 p.m. where your state legislators will be attending. We'll be talking about what's coming up this session. But if you have questions about the intent of these programs or how it's impacting your businesses, we always appreciate when employers attend and give that feedback directly to our elected officials. So if you'd like more information on that, I'm actually going to pull this up real quick so you can see here. It's also on our website in multiple places, but you can take a quick screenshot here of this or just the QR code to get more information on our website about that event itself. But it's a really worthwhile program to learn about what is happening at this legislative session for our businesses. Okay, I know that was fast. All right, in the last 2 minutes for our speakers, is there anything else that you didn't have time to mention that you want to quickly in 2 minutes for your massive programs?
I'm going to put in the chat a link to our website. Specifically, we have a newsletter that we started issuing, as well as a form if employers have specific questions that we will respond directly to you.
Thank you very much. And we also actually have a page on the MetroNorth Chamber website, metronorthchamber.org, for employers that gives brief summaries of some of the new laws and direct links to the website so that you've got a one-stop shop for all of these new laws and things impacting our employers. So
I'll just say quickly, thank you to everyone for participating. We know that when you're participating, you're getting the information. It is a lot, and just encourage everybody to reach out to us if you have additional questions. We're really happy to talk with you all on the phone or through email.
thank you so much. So that is the top of the hour. I am a stickler for time. I want to make sure everyone can get back to running their businesses. And again, thank you to our speakers and thank you to our businesses who are on this call today and for being a part of the Metro North Chamber. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.